Good evening and welcome to the studio this evening. Let's now that I'm live and I can actually see the camera, I'll see if I can give you a little bit of a hat. There we go. That should help a little bit with the glare. And we've got Junior here tonight as well. He's currently sat on my knee. I'm hoping he sits there for the next couple of hours, but we shall see. And white gloves, glasses. Then I should blimey, then I should have everything I need, including a cup of tea. 24 degrees. It's quite warm in the studio this evening. Let's see how much of this I can do before Junior starts to want to be on the desk. Main thing tonight is work down this side here. Romeo the Cug, thank you very much for following, that's very kind of you. So I'm going to try and do down this side of the face to match that side, and then we'll look at a little bit of highlighting and you know, lighting it up. Although I am a little bit liking that dark effect, but we shall see how it goes. Now I've got to do what I did over there, over here. And I'm still asking the same question I ask every night, and that is, why did I pick a leopard? With all the spots, but never mind. Now then, I need to move this light a little bit out of my way, because it is reflecting off the board. Reflecting off the board, making it a little bit difficult for me to see it. So, good evening, Junior. Now hopefully he will stay where he is. So we're below the ear there. I've done the ears a little bit high. That's why it looks a little bit odd. Never mind. He's got his ears perked up, just like Junior has at the moment. So, hairs are going to go in roughly the same direction, and the black spots are roughly about the same sort of size and sort of positioning. Okay. For some reason I seem somewhat reluctant to start this evening. That's very cool, Romeo the Corgi. It might be, I'm not, but thank you very much for that. Well, this is 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this is my 4th Scraperboard, so it's only the 4th time I've ever done this. So I'm going to come down the side of the face, which is roughly down there. I do have some guidelines on here, a little bit. They're very faint, so you won't be able to see them, but actually I'm having a problem seeing them now. do is just do a little bit of outlining just to help me see where the and then we come down around there. Oops, there goes Junior. I didn't think he'd want to sit on me for too long. So before he sits down, let's move this camera, because if he does sit down I won't be able to retrieve that camera. So excuse me a second whilst this camera goes all over the place. Mainly over the top of Junior. Without him, that's Junior by the way, but he's likely to bite me if I'm not careful. Is he having a wash? Are you going to settle down? Do you want to go down there? You want to go down the back of the monitor? It would be appreciated if you did. Max out the cake, hello and good evening. You're just going to sit there now, right in front of the chat window. You want to read chat instead of me? Okay. Well, just read the comments out to me when they come in then, Junior. Let's see if I can position the camera in some way that... Now the light's in the way. Oops, I am knitting with cables at the moment. Can that go around there, Junior? And then, there you go. Put a pair of pliers on them. More interesting to look at than I am, I guess. First time he moves, that camera's going to go all sorts of places. Meow. Yeah. I'll be relatively silent unless something like if I sneeze, for example, he will probably meow back at me. Or if I disturb him in some way. Now one thing I have to, well, kind of have to bear in mind is that the other side of the face here, the black spots will actually look oval shaped because they're down the side, so you're looking at them side on. And the fact that they're oval shape contributes to the fact that you read the image as being the side of the face. I don't think the boo bit works when you're typing in chat the very well max out the cake. Yeah. Just going to extend the cheekbone out a little bit here. Just a little bit close to the eye. Right, that doesn't look too bad. Now this side will appear quite dim. That's intentional. Apart from the fact I'm starting to like the fact that this is dim, but I start with a dim image and then I can brighten it easier that way than starting with one that's too bright. I can't do a lot with it. Now from some perspectives, when you look at the leopard spots in this sort of area of the face. They almost seem to go in lines. I've noticed, so that's it could well be that they are random, but like most humans, you tend to want to see patterns in things. So even if there isn't one, your eyes do tend to almost inject a pattern, and maybe me seeing these things sort of being in lines is just part of that. But if I'm drawing what I'm seeing, then that's what I'm seeing. Now I need to, or want to, keep a distinguishing mark around there, because this is kind of the cheekbone, and then this is where the fur or the skin starts to curve back around the face. Sort of on Junior, it's kind of this area here. Sorry, Junior. So I'm trying to keep this a bit dimmer than that, so you can see the edge. So now it's just lots and lots of drawing hairs. Sorry about the change of lighting. Baby Tears, good evening, welcome to the studio this evening. You're going to lay back down, Junior, so I can have some light back on the subject. Because it'd be... no. How goes it? It doesn't go too bad, Baby Tears. How are you doing at that end? Thank you very much for that. It's proving challenging, shall we say, but that's well, challenging because of the number of dots, but mainly because of this fella in front of me, who you can only just see on the camera. You can have a go, Baby Tears. If I like it, then I may well adopt the name. Sebastian. Not quite seeing a Sebastian, I don't think. Something like, well, mind you, what you named the leopard and what you named the piece are two entirely different things. So the sort of name that was coming to my mind would be something like, I don't know, like Night Stalker for this particular for this particular piece. I'm not sure. I guess now that juniors. I wouldn't know. World of Warcraft is something I don't play and I don't watch. So I'd have to take your word for that, Baby Tears. The reason I just sort of it came to me then was, of course, it's very sort of night-time-ish, sort of striking idea for the cat with the background, and as it's sort of slightly coming to me at the moment, if I'm dim this off so it looks like almost it's just coming out of the blackness, padding forward, then it's sort of stalky. But I quite often go through a few names first in my own mind before I actually end up naming a piece. Sometimes I'll start with a name and match the piece to the name, but not with this one. I have to be a little bit careful with if the edge gets blunt, then what I can end up doing is just indenting the black rather than scratching it, and from where I am I can't tell the difference because of the light reflection, because I don't want it really bright white, I want it quite dim, and it's only sometimes when I sort of change position I look at it and go, it actually hasn't scratched. So I wish I could think of a tool which I could actually use to scratch, which would actually stay sharp. I think my wife probably would, baby tears, but no, unfortunately not. I am couple of hundred miles north of there, and I don't get down there very often these days. I used to be down there all the time when I was working in sales, but these days, no, unfortunately, I don't. I was almost down there this week, but they then decided on the timing of the meeting a bit too late for me to get a decent rail ticket, so but thank you very much for the offer anyway. Kiko Tap Tap, if you make a mistake, can you undo it? Not undo it as such. There's no sort of undo, Control Z. What I can do is I can attempt to hide it, and I can attempt to hide the mistake in two different ways. And it really depends on what the mistake is. The first, potentially the simplest way of hiding a mistake is with this is black ink over the white porcelain clay, which is what the white material is. It's a sandwich. Backboard, porcelain clay, black Indian ink, and you scrape the ink off. So I could paint black Indian ink over the top of the mistake, but that masks it. It doesn't actually hide it, and it doesn't actually undo it. The scratch is still, scratch or scratches is still there, and in certain lights you can see that. You just need to tilt the board slightly, and the light reflects off the edge of the scratch, even though it's black, because black reflects quite well. As you might see, if I just tip this up a little bit, you can suddenly see the reflection of the light. So generally speaking, you would tend to only do that if you're then going to scratch over the top of it again to continue the image, because then the new scratches that you do put in will hide the blackened scratches that were there before. The other thing, or the other mistake that, as opposed to scratches in the wrong place, sometimes they're too bright. Like for example, these around the eyes, a little bit brighter than I'd want. So if you class that as a mistake, which it probably is, then the way in which I would deal with that isn't to black them out and do it again, but what I would actually do is just you're seeing them as white or bright because of the area around it, which is darker, and you're reading the contrast between the two, not the actual level of brightness but the contrast. So if I were to add some additional scratches around the outside here, making it brighter, then these don't look as bright. So I haven't corrected the mistake, I've sort of masked it by adjusting everything around it. So that's kind of the two ways in which you would correct it. If I took a great big wide scrape and just went across the board, you're not going to correct that. That's a throwaway and start again. Okay, baby tears. But generally speaking, the best way of avoiding mistakes is to just take your time Not going too heavy to start, as I'm doing here. It's quite light. Actually, it's a little bit heavier than I want, but it's quite light. And then you've got, you've less to mask if you need to, and sort of an odd scratch like down here, for example. Then a little tiny black dot of ink probably wouldn't be noticed. Thank you, Kika Tap. Now you see, there's very little difference in the scratching, but you can see that bit there is now looks a lot brighter than the areas around it, which was totally unintentional. It's very slightly scratched deeper. Excuse me a second. No, I'm back now. Push the right button, I get further. No. Well, I was going to say it's not particularly hard, but there again, once you know what you're doing, nothing's particularly hard. Correcting mistakes on painting is easier. Yes, I airbrush as well, so I just go over the top of it basically, or just dust it out with the background colour, and I'd be away. So not so much like this. I guess the analogy would be, I don't know if you do oil paint or acrylic paint, but if you've done thick acrylic or thick oil paint and it's dried sufficiently that it's no longer plastic, and so you've got the brush marks in it. If you put another colour over the top, you still see the brush marks from underneath. It's that sort of idea. So you can put another colour over the top, but you could still see the marks from below. But then you put sufficient new marks over the top, it's not seen. So yeah, but just very slightly extra pressure, and this area has got a little bit whiter. Now it's still darker than I need in this area, so I'm not particularly concerned about it. But just to give you a little example, if I just do a few extra scratches just around there, then that area has just expanded a little bit, and now you don't see as easily that one edge that looked very light. The area that's around it has now masked it. So that's just a tiny example. Yeah, we are still on stream. One of the hardest bits of the technique about doing all of this is actually being fairly random about it. Usually, no matter whether you're doing this, you're doing dots as have been used somewhere around, so scratches, dots, or even cross hatching. Quite often they all call for somewhat random scratching. That's really hard to do. 84 Guy, good evening, welcome to the studio this evening. How are you doing? Oh, not too bad, thank you, Eddie. Not too bad. Been a little bit of a busy afternoon, so nice to have a little bit of a rest doing some art. Also got Junior on the desk here, which is now fast asleep. Don't cats always look cute when they're asleep? Of course you can't see him now, but there's Junior. And of course, just at that very instant, he sort of woke up and had a quick scratch and he's gone back to sleep again. We're getting on quite well with this area around here. Just basic, basic filling in at this point. We'll add shading to it again afterwards to bring some of the shapes that are involved out. But just to start with, it's mainly just to get all the fur in, and then the spots, of course. Now then, this scraper is getting a little bit problematic. So I'm just taking a file to the point. And hopefully that will now scratch a little bit better. Yep. Now that's looking a lot better. Yesterday, having done one side of the lower face, it looked really odd. Now that the other side's coming in, it doesn't look as odd as it did. The shapes still look really odd, but we'll work on that. Turning the board so that I can continue to use the scraper in the same direction without having to change direction, because I'm trying to keep the hairs in a natural position, and most of the hair tends to radiate from this sort of area on the nose out in all directions, and so I'm trying to keep to that rough positioning of all the hairs. Now, one thing I have found doing scraperboard is I wouldn't have thought, scratching very lightly as I am doing here, and indeed just scraping off a thin layer of ink would actually cause tools like this to get blunt fairly quickly. Now I know china clay, is it china or porcelain clay, it's relatively a rough compound, but it kind of still surprises me just how quickly the tool edge blunts and just how sensitive I am to it. Perhaps because I am being very light as opposed to sort of doing quite heavy strokes, where perhaps it just wouldn't be as noticeable. But it is something that's kind of surprised me. That's going quite well, thank you very much, Adiful Guy. Certainly been fun to do. You were going to a craft fair this weekend, weren't you, I believe? Or soon? How's that going? Or gone? That's a little bit too wide. There we go. Okay. Time's going quite fast for me at the moment. So I just recall you mentioning it on the stream a little while ago. Captain Dobie, good evening and welcome. Thank you for dropping in this evening. How are you doing? And Fluffy Twiglet, good evening and welcome. We also have Junior on the stream tonight, but he's just curled up over there. Apparently fast asleep. They're probably listening to everything that's being said. I'm not doing too bad, thank you, Captain Derby. I'd forgotten about that. Thank you, Fluffy. I will have to watch that after the stream. I had completely forgotten that was on. Oh, well, that's changed what I was going to do after this. Oh dear. Apparently there's quite a lot of them in this series. They have specifically chosen to do, in fact almost all of them I gather are two-part episodes. I was reading on the BBC website. If you go on there and look up the Doctor Who, there's sort of interviews and sort of things with various people, and the two-part thing was something they've decided to focus on, so they can tell sort of slightly longer stories, or focus on them in different ways. But of course, it's Doctor Who. It's like Miss Marple or Hercule Poirot. You know what's going to happen in the end. It's all going to come out all right, ish, sort of, more or less. Well, it's an interesting pet. What? Well, Either that's a reference to something on Doctor Who, or what makes you think you want to get a snake as a pet? I don't particularly see anything wrong with them. Yeah, still side, still okay. And what sort of snake might it be as well, Fluffy Twiglet? I'm kind of assuming you don't mean a venomous one. Getting a bit bright. A ghost corn snake. So I'm assuming that's white or quite a light lemon sort of colour. That sounds quite a nice colour. I'm sure you'll have fun feeding it. Sorry, just Junior had got his had just rearranged his paws and was pushing the board off the trying to push the board off the desk. You can probably work this way again now. Junior was almost trying to make his own mark on the board just then. Right, we've not far off now finished this side of the face from the point of view of just blocking it in without any sort of real shading green applied. Bit lighter than I wanted. It'd been nice if I could have got it as dark as this, but we might just see if I can do that with the body. Now, then when I do the body though, that's going to be a bit of a challenge to get it dark. And the challenge is mainly with the tools in that particular case, because they're trying to keep the edge or the thing sharp enough, the scraper sharp enough to actually scrape very fine scratches is the challenging bit. And I'm just doing here is just balancing the two sides a little. This one's a little lower than this one was. There we go. Right, 9:30. Okay. Sorry, Junior. Okay, so let's look at a bit of shading. That's a really an abrupt fall off, and it shouldn't be. So we're going to just extend this out a little bit, shading wise. Just to catch the side of the face. Now just down here where the fur's going in the same direction on both, I still want to sort of maintain that top surface of the cheekbone. So I've got to remember this side wants to be still dimmer. And same just down here along the edge of the nose. You see the paw just creeping in slightly. Now I'm trying for subtle shading variations here, nothing particularly really dramatic. But it's certainly too dark at the moment. It sort of almost looks as though it's digging in, which is the wrong direction. So it's now sort of lots of small scratching. In some cases even a single scratch can completely sort of change the shading look of a particular area. So I do have to take care with it not to go mad. Okay, so better. An area up around there. Let's see. Yeah. Just sort of working out the angles and the curves. I'm going to curve that down there just a little bit. Now at this point it's quite easy to make quite a large scratch, which would completely, you know, it would stand out like a black line on a white piece of paper. So I've got to be a little bit careful about how I do this. Similarly, if I actually went across the scratches that are already there, it would just stand out immediately. That was Junior. I will pick the camera up again in a moment. Good evening. He's doing his cute pussycat act again. $24. Right. Sorry, just moving some stuff around. Is chat actually working? Am I actually broadcasting? There's rugby on, is there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hmm. Yeah, sometimes Twitch is funny. Or better, Twitch TV in this particular case. So I was just wondering whether chat was actually working or not, because of, it's rather quiet. And so I just, as you saw, posted caused Moobot to do something. And at which point I just had a pop-up on screen that says, "Hey, you were mentioned in Zaragan Art's channel," and I thought, I'd better be. Right, where's my reference picture? Twitch was a bit awkward when I joined tonight, a bit odd. I couldn't get the control panel up for about 5 minutes. It just kept giving me an error. And so I was kind of wondering whether Twitch had gone funny again. I did on the other side, I kind of want to just round the cheekbones off a little bit. It's rather an abrupt edge at the moment. So although the hair is actually going in a different direction, I sort of just want to graduate the shading so that you can see the fall off rather than having an abrupt straight edge. So when you're close you can see it, but it doesn't look like it's just fallen off the edge of a cliff. Okay, we're starting to bring that brightness up a little bit around there. And I need to make sure I fade it out, so some of these areas around here also want to be a little bit brighter. Still quite actually like this really dark sort of disappearing into the night look. There's almost like a shining a torch effect on at the moment, which I'm quite sort of looking as though there's a torch shining down this way. You can sort of almost see a beam across the face, which I quite like the look of. Well, I'm going to see if I can keep and maintain that sort of look to it. Now that also means I'm going to get what they call a rim light effect, I guess, just around here. Rim light is where the light effectively sort of sneaks around the edge of an object when it's backlit. Now the leopard isn't backlit, but this edge of his nose almost is, just because of the shaping and positioning. It's okay for the moment. I think actually the next thing I want to do is probably to do the chest area. Although I'm going to have to think about whether I actually want to do that at all. I might want to do just some of it. I'll have a think about that though. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it at that point for tonight. It's a little bit early, but I've done more than I expected. in that I sort of ghosted this in and started doing some of the shading, and now that some of the shading's coming in and I've got a bit more to do here, I can sort of see almost a torchlight effect or a spotlight effect, which I quite like. Sort of, it really sort of highlights it as a nighttime, almost a nighttime picture, and therefore, you know, that sort of light beam seems reasonable. But in that case, then I kind of want to fade out down here, the chest area, instead of actually putting it in full. I kind of want to fade it out to almost disappearing around. So I think what I'm going to do is just think about whether I actually want to do that, but then we'll if I do, we'll put that in on, you know, some of that in on the next stream, and then we'll see more about shading around it again once that's in place. So that's it for this evening. If there's anybody watching that doesn't know about the shop, I encourage you to take a look. It's obviously there on the I cannot move my finger in the right way to point, but there. And of course Moobot has been put in chat. But if you're watching, not following, of course it would be appreciated if you did, but if you don't want to, that's quite alright. If you'd just like notification of when I go live, then there is Twitter. It's @ZoraganArt. But that's also below the stream window in case you come back later looking for it. My next stream will be tomorrow evening, 8 PM UK time, 1900 hours GMT, US UTC, whichever you like. Or approximately 2 hours ago, it was 8 o'clock. So, but tomorrow. Thank you, Captain Derby. Thank you, everybody else. And have a good evening. Bye-bye.